Hi, my name is Karuana Gatimu, and welcome to SharePoint Television. I work for Microsoft IT's Discovery and Collaboration Group, and it's my pleasure to be here today with two more luminaries from the SharePoint community. You're going to be able to see highlights of this segment on Channel 36 in your room, and I'm thrilled today to be here with Jeremy Thake and Mark Miller. For those of you who don't know yet, but I'm sure you will, Nothing But SharePoint is a collaborative exercise from both of them, and they're going to share the history of how both of the individual blogs came together to make this amazing site that is such a service to the community as a whole. So Mark, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the community?
Yeah, thanks. I actually, on my business card now, it actually says serial community developers because I've done so many. But EndUser SharePoint was an offshoot. I think when we all first started doing MOS in 2007, there wasn't that much documentation. I was doing AIDS vaccine research development, and I needed a way to coordinate the data. So the Gates Foundation actually gave us a full-blown MOS implementation, and I built a solution from that. Oh. And along the way, I was hitting typical problems that I had to solve, and I just started documenting them on something called EndUser SharePoint. And so as that developed, I started to develop a following because the things I was doing evidently rang a bell with other people on things they're having problems with.
I think that's very true. I mean, I've certainly been on EndUser SharePoint back in the day when I was trying to figure out how to make those wonderful little color-coded indicators.
Those were cool, weren't they?
They were very
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
I use that a lot, for sure. Jerry, tell us about your journey.
So I started in the SharePoint community as a developer. So my accent, obviously I'm not from America. I lived in Australia for 8 years and started in .NET development and was working a lot with the government space and just started building applications on top of SharePoint, moving away from normal .NET development. And same story really, just sharing what I was learning as I was learning MOS and WSS2 as well. And started to encourage others to write on the side as well. So it was very much development focused and it like code samples, and it really complemented TechNet. So TechNet was, the MSDN aspect really pushing, but it was a lot very much around mapping directly to the API. The stuff that I was doing and other writers were doing was much more a use scenario of actual implementation. So we referenced a lot of MSDN content, but it was different enough that it was useful to users.
And it's the next evolution of that content. Sometimes I feel like, I get great insights from MSDN or TechNet or what have you, but then there's those of us in the field who are actually doing it. We always have something else to share, usually, for sure. Can you give us some scope, Mark? Why don't you give us some scope of how many visitors did you actually have at EndUser SharePoint previously? How did it grow in terms of its reach?
I don't know, what are we doing now? We've got 140,000 people a month check in, a couple 100,000 page views going on. The evolution was really the word of mouth. I think everywhere we go in the world, people that are trying to support the company said you need to use SharePoint, and they look to us for the solutions or the answers to their questions. And so it's really word of mouth. The consultants are sending people our way to say, if you need something, go to the site, go to Nothing But SharePoint and see what's going on there. I think the developer community is doing that too.
Yeah,
right?
The end user community is actually a lot bigger than the developer channel, which is always, there's more of them out there, I guess.
Right.
But we also do like an events calendar. So all the events globally. It amazes me when you check it every week or whatever, how many SharePoint events there are around the world in 1 week.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. So that we kind of, we do little things like that to try and promote. And the most recent one was the aggregator, which me and Mark have been talking about for a long time. And I work at AvePoint now, but I'm more of an architect than a developer. And so I had to kind of get my hands dirty again and start writing code. And so we aggregate a lot of blog content from, the well-known bloggers like Andrew Connor and those guys. And so you get our content, but you also get the community content as well. So we're trying to promote people's blogs as well and be that hub.
And I think that's a really important point that you just pointed out, is that you're promoting other people's blogs as well. So you're not trying to hoard the traffic. I really want to commend that, because I think that that's some true integrity and community spirit. This is about collaboration. So none of us are going to have all the answers individually. We have to come together and point to other people's solutions and what have you.
I mean, when you think about what Veronique Palmer's doing in South Africa for the end user community, phenomenal stuff.
Right.
And as we look through and see the different types of content, we absolutely want to promote those people.
And for me, like when I started blogging, it was a way of me really making sure that I understood what I was writing before I published it. So it was a good way of me testing that I knew what I was doing.
Right.
But I guess for me, the buzz is that when people like at the show go, oh, you know, I read your blog and that article saved me hours and thank you very much for doing it. Right. That for me is like the reward is the fact that I'm helping other people.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're all the same, right? I know you write some great stuff too. So it's kind of that aspect of it, and the sharing is where it really makes a difference.
And also I think an important point, and this is something I've noticed before in both of your blogs, is that you really make an effort to find new authors and to encourage people to share their experience. You know, myself, I tend to write about business issues and you know, adoption and collaboration and things of that nature, change management. And so sometimes at the beginning I felt like, well, I'm not a developer, I'm not always writing about, you know, core, you know, issues in terms of building a farm or what have you, and you can minimize your own experience. But I've really noticed how both of you, and especially the EndUser SharePoint, nothing but SharePoint now, has really reached out to get people involved in the community. How's that been for you?
You know, when you look at people like Laura Rogers, you look
Laura
at people
Rogers,
like
great example.
Mark Anderson, you look at Jim Bob Howard. These are people that were invisible, and our platform is so big now, and we have so much visibility that we can take somebody that really knows what they're talking about. And you find them through the comments.
Absolutely.
They start participating and they answer a question, go, whoa, this person knows what they're talking about, and they have a good voice.
Yes.
And that's how I found them. And Jeremy, you're developers.
Yeah, it's very much the same. I mean, a lot of it's the community events, you know. You get them after they've had like 3 or 4 beers and you go, look, you should really start writing more, and then they're sucking it in. They have to say yes. So,
they have to, absolutely.
So that's always been
totally
good.
True.
But,
we can shame them all into participating, right? At the next SharePoint.
The guilt trip comes on.
Exactly.
But I think that the hardest bit has been the quality, making sure that there's a lot of people that offer content and making sure that it's factual and correct. We had some incidents last year where some of the content wasn't accurate. So now a lot of the work I do is just reviewing content before it goes up to make sure it is actually correct and references the right things on MSDN to help people.
And I think that really points to the issue that people trust you as a source.
And that's a problem now.
Yeah.
And actually when the content happened that Jeremy's talking about, I had some pushback from people that say, you need to take that article off the site, it's not correct. And I said, this is a community site. And what happens is anyone can put content out and the community responds to it. And the response we got back was, this is no longer a community site. This is an essential resource to the SharePoint community, and you have to start thinking of it that way. And Jeremy and I actually talked about that in depth to say, okay, what's our responsibility here?
Yeah, being a trusted advisor is a responsibility, and even though you want things to be crowdsourced and what have you, it's a fine line, you know, but also, you know, taking all your time to editorial, you know, have editorial control is also difficult. So I respect the fact that you're both really trying to find what's going to be right for the community.
And I've been stung before where you do a Bing search, you find some code away there and grab it, and then you spend 3 hours troubleshooting it because the quality of the stuff wasn't good enough. So, you know, it's very important that you start to learn where the good sources are and where the bad sources are. We have 2 guesses on who that was. You kind of, you know, you start to learn the names you can trust and some of the ones you have to be a little bit careful with the code.
Well, and I think that's also important too, is that, you know, in the SharePoint community, there are names that you can trust. There are people who are going to give you the right information, and this is how you find them. And I let, personally, I know that I can't read everything that's written about SharePoint in any given week, so I let all of you curate what's important for me, right?
I think that's an important part of the community aspect of what we do, is we are the trusted filter for the community.
That's right.
And I think that's where the pushback came from last year, is if you're going to filter for us, it's got to be right.
Absolutely, absolutely, that's so true. So how do you feel that social media has played into the growth of your site and also to the SharePoint community as a whole? Jeremy?
Well, obviously, I'm a little bit of a Twitter whore. Like, I'm always on Twitter. Probably a bit more so than with Mark.
I know that because I see you there.
Yeah,
I don't know what that makes me. We're not going to talk about that.
Some of this SharePoint, some of this not. But I think we encouraged very early on adding all the social widgets to a lot of the pages to try and encourage people to share the content. And SharePoint is great. Like, people come up to me and they recognize me through the Twitter, and same with Mark. But it's recognizing people that you've never met before, that you know is on Twitter and Facebook and have helped you or, you know, given their opinion. And it's great to be an event this large where you actually meet these people in real life rather than just online. So I think SharePoint is unusual. I was talking to some Microsoft guys in other product teams, and they're like, how has this happened with the SharePoint community? Like, Dynamics CRM team are like, we really want to build this community for us, and they just don't understand how this has been so rapid and viral in the SharePoint world. I think it is a little bit because there's IT guys, there's dev guys, and there's business guys, and we tend to all get on, and it's surprisingly so for an IT product, people are actually quite social, and so it's nice to kind of have a chat with people.
Absolutely, and especially since it's not all guys.
No, exactly, that's right. Whereas
there's
it was a Bill in
gals
Redmond
here too, yeah.
2 weeks ago, and it was a little bit, very different conference to the SharePoint ones we go to. So it was an eye-opener. It made me appreciate being part of that community and how friendly and open everyone is. I think the key with it is people want to share. I think in other areas people hoard the knowledge because it's power. They don't want to share their ideas because that would mean that they might not be contacted to be engaged for some consultancy work. Whereas the SharePoint community is kind of more about sharing and helping people, which is really nice.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Mark, what are your thoughts on social media and the SharePoint community?
I think over the last 3 years it's become absolutely essential.
Yeah.
One of the first things that we realized when Twitter came out is that as we moved into Twitter, that we could get immediate answers to our problems. I mean, the higher levels of SharePoint could actually be there and respond. That has now moved into Yammer because you can get a more threaded discussion that's happened there. Facebook, yeah, it's okay, but I think the Twitter to Yammer move in has been very powerful.
I think that the LinkedIn groups and the Facebook groups never really worked.
Right.
My grandmother and my mother really don't care about SharePoint.
Right.
So it was kind of, it moved onto that Yammer platform. The SB-Yam community is huge.
SPM is an excellent
and
source.
Mark's right, the quality of the threading and the discussions is a lot easier to follow. Being able to reply and answer, not in 140 characters, makes things a lot more useful as well. Yeah. So it's been amazing how quickly that's grown.
And you can upload documents, and I mean, I think that Yammer really does facilitate the conversation in a more useful and efficient fashion.
Yeah.
Although I know people still use hashtag SPHelp. People still find information out on Twitter.
Stack
Absolutely.
Exchange as well.
Yeah,
SharePoint
they use that.
Run.
Yeah,
but that's mainly developers. I think the SB-Yam is much more business
for sure
aligned, I think. So it's good.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and Yammer is kind of a new, obviously, everybody knows Microsoft acquired Yammer, and I think that for us, it gives us a real opportunity to shift the conversations a little differently, and also capture conversations that are already happening.
I think people, like for instance for me, it was a little bit selfish. I wanted to explore how Yammer worked and how it was different from Facebook and how it is different from SharePoint Social. And it is proved, I mean, we use it internally, it's proved that those discussions are happening with voluntarily and people are sharing stuff. I think the balance between whether it's a blog post or whether it's now a Yam is harder. Twitter's obviously a lot easier because it's discrete 140 characters, whereas Yammer is now, you can see people blogging a bit more on Yammer and blogs are narrowing a bit. So.
And I think that we collectively have to give people best practices around that as well, because for me, if you follow me on Twitter or on Yammer, you're going to get SharePoint-related, business-related conversation. But if you're friends with me on Facebook, you're probably going to get my politics and my puppy photos, right? So I think it's good to be able to segment the conversation a little bit and use the right tool for the right thing. But I think, don't you believe that's still evolving, Mark? How we're using this, especially with the advent of Yammer?
Well, there's no doubt about it. The idea that we have decided which types of applications are most appropriate for which types of discussions, I mean, that's an interesting paradigm we've moved into now. Because before it was, okay, I'm going to push everything into this one thing and this is where I'm going to live. And now, well, there's different uses for different,
I agree.
So, I mean, we haven't talked about it personally, but the purchase of Yammer is a very, very powerful statement in itself. Not just the dollar value, I mean, that was big, but what the potential is there is interesting, and what's going to happen there,
Very much so. I think it's going to be, and I believe, and of course that's why I joined Microsoft this time, I think that this is an unbelievable time to be with the company. It's a wonderful time to be in the SharePoint community. It's dynamic, it's exciting, things are changing. So, and I really believe that, community is a huge portion of that, and what we can do for the community. And along those lines, what do the two of you see as the future for Nothing But SharePoint? How do you see it evolving, say over the next year or two? You're smiling. Do you want to answer first?
No more coding for me, hopefully.
No more coding for you, right?
In the future, there's obviously going to be the upgrade from 2010 to 2013.
Yes.
I'm already shuddering a bit about that one because Mark will just be the QA guy and there's me kind of slogging away. And Mark's a tough customer.
Yes.
There will be a lot of things I don't like that. That should be over here. And yeah, so that'll all happen probably next year. So I think that 2013, I would like to see us push more into the engaging more community users to comment and submit more feedback. So that's kind of my targets, but I know Mark's probably...
No, that's okay. I mean, you're on the right track because we have talked about it a bit.
Yeah.
One of the things that we need to figure out in the SharePoint environment is how easy is it to engage in the process of participating.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. It's very difficult for the user when they come to the site.
Mm-hmm.
How easy it is to comment. Can you use anonymous comments? Can you actually get a discussion going? And it's difficult. Mm-hmm. So if we can actually, in the future, make it easier for people to participate, that's what my goal is, because then the community starts to grow. We want to be the hub, and Jeremy and I talked about this when we first got together, is we want to be the hub for every SharePoint community. You know, we have a big vision that we want to engage in here. And the idea is, if it has to do with SharePoint user groups, if it has to do with SharePoint Saturday, if it has to do with people involved in those events, we want to be the hub of that. Mm-hmm. So that's why we started and Jeremy built the blog aggregator. And we want everybody to say, okay, here's my morning coffee, where do I go to get my information?
Excellent. Yeah,
and then things like the t-shirts this week are a bit of fun. They're arriving tomorrow, so there's a lot of personalized people that registered with their Twitter names in the back. And
I have one
great.
there somewhere.
There's a lot of people walking around with last year's one on, so it all helps. It just spreads the word about the site. So
absolutely.
The other thing that we have.
That's a good segue.
There you go. That's a
nice
one.
Look at that.
This
what a pretty
is the
color.
SharePoint Survival Bracelet, if you haven't seen one of these before. This is 10 feet of parachute cord. And so I know that if you get a panic around here on the floor, you just unravel this and you got what you need. But this is pink for a reason. This is breast cancer awareness. And so we do have these in pink, and I'm going to hand that to you, and I've got 5 more coming your way for your group.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. This is an important cause that means a lot to me personally. Yeah. So I absolutely volunteered to wear these, and I will continue to wear it throughout the organization. Yes, it does. I did think about this. I am trying to be color coordinated, even if I'm not very coordinated.
You know how exciting that was? Is 240 people registered to create their own SharePoint survival bracelets when I put it out.
Yes, we did.
I had to cut it off. I couldn't supply enough.
SharePoint survival is very important. Well, this is an excellent segment on community with 2 of the acknowledged leaders of it. I hope that you'll come down and join us at the Community Lounge, and also make sure that you reach out and meet Mark and Jeremy, visit them at their booth, listen to their sessions, and just get to know them. This is another segment of SharePoint Television, and to close, I'd like to know, Jeremy, tell us one thing that people don't know about you.
Oh, yeah.
We're not going to do the partner thing, are we?
No, we're not. One thing they don't know about me. Well, a lot of people think I'm from Australia. I was actually born in London.
Oh.
But I left London when I was 23 and lived in Australia for 8 years. So a lot of people, the twang kind of held on. I live in New York now, so just survived the floods. Actually, you know what, we were joking earlier. I think we don't see each other as much or talk to each other as much as before when I was in Australia.
Right.
We're only 10 minutes away in New York walking distance.
Now we don't talk to each other. But yeah, I'm actually originally from London.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's good to know. That's good. I didn't know that. That's great to know. See? Works out good. Mark?
You know, the most recent thing that I think is fun is when the Sharing the Point tour went to Africa. I had this big, huge beard. Everybody said, don't even, okay?
The Lorax beard, I remember it.
And what happened is, when I landed in Africa, we did Johannesburg, Cape Town, we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, went to Zanzibar, Dar es Salaam. Everybody called me Babu, which was grandfather.
That's right.
So I had to learn a little African. Umjuku means, okay, my grandchild.
I know. That's excellent. That is excellent. I love that. Well, as I said, this is another segment of SharePoint TV. Make sure to watch the highlights up in your room on channel 36. Come down, visit us here on stage and in the Community Lounge. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.